I came to England in 1966, a year after I graduated from Warsaw Academy of Music. And I was always fascinated by the sound of English language, but unfortunately I always had only French and Russian. So I decided to come to England and learn the language in England.
You came here to take up employment
or
study?
I came just to study, and I studied English at Clarendon College, and I was an au pair girl in West Bridgford with an English family.
Whereabouts in Poland did you come from?
I lived in Bielsko-Biała, which is between Krakow and Katowice, and I was born in a small town called Czechowice-Dziedzice.
Could you give me a little bit of background detail about your family?
Well, my father was a musician. My mother was never working, always a housewife. And I had a brother, younger brother and younger sister. I went to music school when I was 7, and then I went to the next stage of music school when I was 14, and then I went to Academy of Music in Poznań for 2 years when I studied choral conducting with the famous Professor Stuligrosz, and then I went to, for the last 2 years, I went to Warsaw Academy of Music and graduated there in 1965.
Was it difficult at that time, 66, to
It was very difficult to come to get out of Poland, and I do believe that it was just some kind of error that let me come, that they gave me the visa and so on, because after a year in Nottingham, I went back to Poland to gather materials for my PhD, which I was supposed to do at Oxford. And my husband followed me, and we got married in Poland, but I had to wait 6 months for an exit visa. But that was during the communist era.
When you first arrived in Nottingham?
When I first arrived, I didn't know any English at all, and I knew that my host would be meeting me in London, and all I could say was, "Sir Peter, I presume." And I went to several guys, and they were running a mile, but eventually there was Sir Peter, and we took a train from London, St Pancras, to Nottingham. And I was very happy with this English family who were extremely kind to me. Sir Peter was head of BP in those days, and there were churchgoers. They introduced me to the choir. Little I knew that I would be conducting Polish choir later on. Yes, the beginnings were difficult because I did not understand any English whatsoever. And there were keen geologists, so they would go geologizing and left me with the old lady, and I couldn't understand what she wanted, and it was hard. But I learned English very quickly thanks to the fact that I had no Polish friends, and I could not speak Polish at all.
Did the family that you were staying with speak Polish?
No, not at all, no. They were English, absolutely. They were just English through and through, and very traditional English, so I learned how to make good English tea and things like that I wouldn't have known otherwise.
Did you have any contact with the Polish community?
Not until I learned English. I remember declining any invitations from any Poles, saying, almost being rude, but saying, until I learn English, I don't want to speak Polish. So later on, just before going back to, after about 10 months in England when I could speak English, I started meeting Poles.
You say that you married in Poland. Did your husband enjoy his first experience?
Yes, it was quite interesting for him because it was during the communism. In fact, he often says that he married a girl from behind the Iron Curtain, so he would leave the mother-in-law behind the Iron Curtain. And it was quite an experience, yes. And then we had another wedding here on Derby Road in the Catholic Cathedral, because I just wanted to feel part of the Polish community when I came.
So once you'd established yourself in England and you'd learnt the English language, did you continue your musical life?
Yes, very much so, because I was very lucky to get a job as a head of music at a big comprehensive school in Long Eaton called Wiltop. I stayed there until I had my first baby 5 years later. And I also played cello in the orchestra in Nottingham Art Theatre, Co-op Art Theatre I think it was called, where they were putting on operas. They would have soloists, professionals, and the orchestra and the chorus was always amateurs, and I played there until I broke my arm for about 5 years.
What instrument did you play at the time?
I played cello, but I also always had to play piano as well.
I understand that you did a lot of charity work while you were here.
Yes, for 10 years I worked for something called First Poznan Penny Appeal, and then after a year I decided to continue it, and I was doing lots of concerts, cabarets, and we went to all the Polish communities all over England, and all the money that we got for these concerts, or my choir was doing concerts, we were sending to Poland for the spinal operations in Poznan Clinic.
So once you'd settled more in England and you'd started to work and play your music, did you have a deeper contact with the Polish community here?
Very much so, yes. As soon as I settled in England, I decided to take part in Polish community. I would be sitting on various committees in the Polish parish, and I became having studied choral conducting. I decided to take over the Polish choir, which I have worked with for 31 years. Well, I still work with them for 31 years.
The Polish choir, which I understand was the St. Cecilia choir.
Yes.
And you were the conductor.
Yes. It was a mixed choir, 4-part choir, and we had not only sacred music, but we sang Polish folk music and artistic arrangements but only in Polish, simply because my members would not perhaps sing well with having strong accents, so we decided to just sing in Latin and in Polish only.
Was the choir important to the Polish community at that time?
Oh, very much so, because in those days we had lots of academias. I don't know what it is in English, but it's to commemorate various Polish traditional battles and all sorts of things, and also religious. We sang in the church, not every Sunday, but quite often, and every time there was any big occasion, my choir would be taking part. We were also invited by English hosts, and we even sang once in the Albert Hall, when there was a concert of various nationalities. Also, we were singing in cathedral when there were various nationalities choirs singing their sacred music. So yes, we weren't just limited to the Polish community, but we were singing in other places.
Did you find it very difficult to balance your home life, your professional
Not
life?
really, because my husband, who is English, was always extremely supportive. My children both went to Polish school in Nottingham, and as a result of this, now they're adults and they speak Polish quite well, in spite of having an English father. Yes, he was always very supportive of everything I did in the Polish community. In fact, I had a diploma from the Pope, which I have somewhere on display, thanking me for all my work for the Polish community, especially in the artistic field.
When you were bringing up your own family, did you introduce them to Polish customs?
Oh, very much so. In fact, we keep all the Polish traditions, and my children who are now married also keep up the Polish traditions. So we have an extended Christmas. We have a Polish Christmas Eve, and then we have English Christmas Day and the Boxing Day, and of course, so we keep all and the same with the Easter, which is slightly different to the way the English celebrate. So children always come here for Easter and introduce it to their children, the Polish way of celebrating Easter.
And do your children speak Polish?
They do, yes, they do. With mistakes, but they do speak.
Did they go to Polish school?
They did both go to Polish school. But now they try to keep it up, and they even want me to teach their children Polish, which is difficult because they live in London. But whenever I go there, they always correct me, speak Polish to them, speak Polish to them. So they get a little bit of it, but not, they're not, obviously not fluent.
Did you maintain contact with Poland?
Oh yes, till now. Oh yes, absolutely. I'm still conducting the Polish choir. I go to Mass every Sunday. I don't think I'm on a committee now, but I was on various committees in the Polish parish. So yes, and I belong to the Polish Social Club, which has finished, I think, a few years ago. But yes, I'm always very much involved in the Polish opłatek and jajkos and things like that. So, and my husband always accompanies me to these things.
Did you maintain contact with Poland itself?
Oh, very much so, yes. We went to Poland almost every year, and my parents used to come over, and my brother and sister, and this is why my children speak Polish, because of contact with Poland and with Polish grandparents coming over here.
Did your family go to the Polish Centre?
Oh, yes, yes, absolutely. We always had the various celebrations of the choir, and my parents would take part in that, and if there were any other celebrations in the parish, they always used to take them. And they would come to my children's first communion and the bierzmowanie, what's that? Confirmation. They were always coming over for that.
You never contemplating returning to Poland?
Never, never. I go there every year. I love going back to Poland, but England is my home. Because my children were born here, I've got an English husband, I work in this country, so this is home.
What is left of your family now in Poland? Is it
only my nephews and one niece. My parents died and my brother and sister died. I'm the only survivor from this whole family.
And do they still live in the same area?
Yes, I still have a house there in Poland, so when we go to Poland we stay in this house, my parents' house.
Could you tell me why it was that you came to Nottingham out of all the places you could have gone to?
That's because first of all, I wanted to go to England to learn English, and the lady who was going to teach me English decided that the only way at my age to learn the language is to go to the country of that language. So she found a contact in Cambridge. It was an organisation called University Aunts, who were finding au pair girls for this university staff. And I was supposed to go to Cambridge when all of a sudden a lady who lived in Nottingham contacted my English teacher and asked if she knew of any Polish girls who would like to come to Nottingham. So she decided to scrap the whole Cambridge, and that's how I came to Nottingham. And at that time, I didn't know where Nottingham was, what it was all about. But I was very happy here.
So your knowledge of England and Nottingham itself was pretty rudimentary at the time, then?
Oh yes. I didn't know anything about Nottingham. A little bit about London, maybe, and in England as a country. But Nottingham was just something I couldn't even imagine what it was.
Did you have any difficulty at that time returning to Poland?
No, because simply because I did not escape from Poland, but I went back to Poland, and my husband followed me to Poland, and we did everything absolutely legal in order to be able to travel back to Poland, and my parents coming over and so on.
So there was no difficulties?
No difficulties at all, only because we did everything legally.
Can you remember what Nottingham was like in the 60s when you...
Not all that much, really. No. It's 40 years now, over 40 years since I came to Nottingham, so I don't remember that. I remember certain shops that are no longer there, and of course I see the difference now, and even the market square is totally different to what it. Although I remember going to there was a great experience for me. There was a group of au pair girls invited by the Lord Mayor to tea in the council house. So that was quite because halfway through my stay here, Polish girls started coming. There were two more Polish girls, but we never spoke Polish. We always just stuck to English, so we would learn English, because I thought I'd just have 1 year to learn the language.
How difficult do you think it was to maintain your Polish identity in England?
It wasn't difficult, simply because my husband was so supportive. In fact, most of our friends are Polish rather than English. So yes, we stayed very much within the Polish community. We go to all these dances and balls organized by various organizations in the Polish communities, and most of our friends are Polish living in England.
At the time that we're speaking of now, when you were married and settling in Nottingham, were there a lot of Polish businesses or Polish entrepreneurs living in Nottingham?
Not that I knew of, and my husband didn't have any contacts with any Polish people business-wise, but I'm sure there were some, but I wasn't aware of them. I know that there was a Polish dentist, Polish doctor, but I don't know of many businessmen, simply because it wasn't my area.
Do you think that Polish people have made a positive contribution to local?
Oh, very much so. I would say so, definitely. Yes.
Did you?
Although, having said that, I must stress that Polish people always contributed to the English way of life by keeping their own traditions. They didn't isolate themselves into any ghettos. They were always open to contacts with English people. I would like to mention that apart from the Polish choir, there's always been other artistic groups. There was a Podhale, which specialized in, it was a group that sang Polish folk songs, and they were very popular. They were often invited to various English functions to sing Polish songs, and they were wearing Polish national costumes. And talking of Polish national costumes, my choir recently went to do a concert for old people in a big old people's centre in Clifton, part of Nottingham, and the residents loved the costumes and kept asking about how they were made and where they were made and so on. And then when we went with the next concert, we decided to not to show the costumes, but be in black like we normally are, because the repertoire was different. They were saying what a shame, because we were looking forward to seeing your beautiful, colourful costumes. There's also always a dancing group also showing the Polish national costumes, which are very colourful.
Did you feel when you were performing with the choir that it was a way of showing people, giving them a little insight into
Polish culture? Very much so, yes.
Very important.
Very important. And recently my choir took part in Nottingham, you would know the name of it, some kind of festival, where my choir was singing in national costumes, and that was quite interesting for the English people to see those very colourful costumes.
Was the choir already established when you arrived in England?
Yes. The choir already existed in Nottingham for something like 60 years. My choir was taking part in the celebrations of the 50th anniversary of the choir, and the Polish consul came from London for this concert. And I conducted the choir for the last 31 years. So yes, the choir was very well established when I took over.
I know that you mentioned that you had a period of study and training to play instruments. Did you have any kind of background in vocal choirs or singing? Was it something that you just
not in England? No, this was something that that I studied in Poland, and I've always used this knowledge for conducting the Polish choir.
And is the Polish choir still in existence now?
It is, but it's dwindled down to a much smaller number now, simply because people are dying.
Is there not a young influx of
And
people?
unfortunately, no. Having said that, I must say not many young people from Poland, coming from Poland now, join my choir simply because they didn't like to be part of the old choir. But there was a Polish youth choir, because last year we did a carol concert in Polish church together with this young choir, but I don't know whether they still exist, but I know that there is a children's choir now, and they sing at certain events.
Do you perform on a regular basis, or is it by invitation?
It used to be on regular basis, but now we don't have so many of these what we call academias, so it's usually by invitations. We sing not only at masses but also at Polish older generations like choir to sing at the funerals and occasionally weddings and so on.
You were telling me that your husband went over with you to get married in Poland. At that time, the political situation was radically different to what it is now. Could you tell me how your husband obtained visas and the ability
Yes,
to travel?
yes. He didn't even have to go to London. There was a travel agency on Mansfield Road in Nottingham, and the gentleman who was then the director of that agency equipped my husband in everything he needed. He organised the visa for him and so on, and told him all about Poland and what to expect when he gets to Poland and so on. So yes, this was all Poles used to go to this agency every time they went to Poland, because you had to, in those days, you had to have visas, you had to have exchange money and so on. So yes, this was a very important part of the Polish community in Nottingham. In fact, I think he acted as a Polish consul for Nottingham.
He was an unofficial Polish consul.
Oh, possibly unofficial, yes. Possibly it was unofficial. But he was very useful, especially for English people who were going to Poland, who didn't know anything about Poland or what to expect in Poland.
So over the period of your lifetime, you've seen some quite dramatic changes in terms
Oh,
of...
very much so. Very much so. Because we were going visiting Poland every year, we saw the changes occurring there in Polish life.
And also in Nottingham, with the influx of new young Polish migrants, do you think they've been a positive addition to the Polish community?
I would imagine so. Well, apparently they make a difference to the English economy.
Yes.
And they take jobs that English people don't want to do, and so on. So yes, I would imagine that they contribute to the general life.